Ellen DeGeneres is ending her show as her ratings plummet.
Mr. Reagan.
Now, spring is here, and what do we do in spring? Spring cleaning. The mower needs to be sorted, the garden looks a little bit wrecked, and the barbecue needs some work. You might enjoy doing these jobs, but if you don't, or you can't, you're going to need to pay somebody else, and that takes a bit of money. And let's face it, putting money aside for comfortable retirement is the only way that you're going to get out of doing the lawn yourself, right? And if you got a little bit of money saved up in the bank, well, that way you can visit the kids, you can hike the trail, you can play golf, all the things that your friends are doing. And Noble Gold can help with this by investing in precious metals along with your other investments. A gold or silver IRA is a great way of doing this. And this month, Noble Gold is gifting a genuine rare Carson City minted Morgan silver dollar with every qualifying IRA or 401k that you invest with. And this thing is fantastic. I mean, even just the case, I love this thing. See, because I actually really love old coins and stuff like that. And it's absolutely beautiful. I looked it up, and these things are a nice little chunk of change, and it's genuinely old. I mean, apparently these things were distributed in the 70s. They were obviously minted in the 19th century. In 1964, after a century in obscurity in the vaults. So these were in like the vaults. And so in the 1960s, they were like, okay, let's go ahead and distribute these. And I think the initial offering was like $15, and all these collectors bought them up. But yeah, now that you can get one in this nifty case, I mean, this thing, it's beautiful. It really is sort of like an old-fashioned thing that you can have, and it reminds you of better days in America when everybody wasn't so woke and crazy. People say that, oh, if you're nostalgic for the old times, you're nostalgic for oppression. No. If you're nostalgic for the old times, you're nostalgic for a time in America where people respected things like morality and ethics and not like wokeness and horrible things like that. But when people they actually had a sense of integrity. And I think people long for those days. All right, so if you want one of these Carson City coins and you want to invest in an IRA or a 401k, get in touch with the experts at noblegoldinvestments.com or call 877-646-5347 and talk to the experts now. That's 877-646-5347, or you can go to the website noblegoldinvestments.com or click the link in the description below. I don't know how much anybody cares about this story, but I think it's interesting. Ellen DeGeneres, a popular TV show. It's funny. I wasn't really like a fan of the Ellen DeGeneres show ever, but I had a friend who was, this girl Chelsea, and she used to post clips from the Ellen DeGeneres show all the time on Instagram and Facebook and stuff. And so I would watch those clips which she was posting, and some of them were really funny, really funny. So I'm actually quite shocked that the Ellen DeGeneres show has plummeted in ratings. I don't know why. It's interesting. Let's have a look at this. Talk show queen Ellen DeGeneres is reportedly planning to end her long-running daytime show next season as she deals with plummeting ratings and continued fallout from her show's workplace misconduct scandal. The outlet said, this would be the Hollywood Reporter, said Ellen DeGeneres is expected to make an official announcement on Wednesday's show. She's expected to sit down with Oprah Winfrey. When you're a creative person, you constantly need to be challenged. And as great as this show is, and as fun as it is, it's just not challenging anymore. It's just not a challenge anymore. Actually, it's too much of a challenge, I guess, at this point. I mean, this makes some sense. I don't think she's right to say she's not challenged anymore. I think what she should be saying, I think what's probably more true, is that she's gotten bored of it, right? She's kind of been doing the same shtick for, gosh, I don't know how long she's had this show. How long has she had this show? It's been like, 15 years or something like that? Anyway, if you're doing the same shtick day after day after day after day for 15 years, yeah, you're probably going to get bored of it eventually. So she could challenge herself. I think the way she could challenge herself is to sit down and think of new ideas to reinvigorate the show, make it funnier, make it better, make it something different. But she doesn't want to do that, so she's just going to quit. I think she's got enough money. She could probably retire, really. Last year, the Ellen DeGeneres show was hit by accusations of workplace misconduct, with several former employees accusing senior management of bullying behavior and sexual misconduct. DeGeneres herself wasn't accused of anything, although some say she tolerated the toxic atmosphere. DeGeneres denied she's ending the show because of the scandal. It almost impacted the show. It was very hurtful to me. I mean, very, she told the reporter. But if I was quitting the show because of that, I wouldn't have come back this season. So that's not why I'm stopping. But I think it probably has something to do with it. BuzzFeed News reported last year that senior management created an environment where people are mistreated and fired for taking medical leave and bereavement days. Yeah, Hollywood's a weird place, guys. It's a lot about who's your friend and stuff like that, and things aren't always fair. And I could imagine that it's tough because every job that you do, every production you're on, whether it be a movie or a TV show, it's a massively collaborative effort. You have hundreds of people on these projects a lot of times, and you do have to deal with dickheads. I mean, there are a lot of real a-holes in the movie business, in entertainment business, and you just have to kind of deal with them, right? They're going to be working on your show. It's a weird environment. It's a weird environment. A lot of people are like really fake nice to everybody because they just want everybody to like them, and then other people are just they get some kind of kick out of some kind of power trip out of being mean to everybody. It's a very weird town. Very weird town. So any show you're going to be on, you're going to have some real a-holes, but that's just Hollywood. It's very rare that you have a really great set with tons of really great people. As your BuzzFeed News reported that senior management created an environment. We just talked about that. There's also several accusations of sexual harassment, groping, and other forms of misconduct against an executive producer, head writer Kevin Lehman, who has denied the allegations. The show has suffered a staggering ratings decline since the scandal broke, reportedly losing more than 1 million viewers on the current season. And I think that's something that people really liked about the Ellen DeGeneres show, is that it was a very sort of like, it was watched by a bunch of middle-aged women, right? And I think they wanted a show that was somewhat clean, and they could feel like safe, right? Like a safe space. And once they felt like, oh, there's some scandal here, it lost that appeal. It lost the appeal of purity. It was no longer this sort of pure and scandal-free place that they could just go watch TV and feel comfortable. DeGeneres didn't discuss the ratings drop-off in her interview with the reporter. Instead, she said that she remains proud of the show. I'm not the pretty girl who made it in Hollywood because of the way I looked, she said. That's a weird thing for her to say at this point. It always amazes me. Like, I always find it fascinating how obsessed some people are with looks. I think I've been criticized before by saying that, some person's ugly or some person's fat or something like that. But the reason I'm kind of comfortable talking about that stuff isn't because I'm very critical of people just because they're ugly, or I'm critical of people because they're fat or whatever. I'm critical of myself for getting fat, but but that's because that's not my typical state. It's because I'm so sedentary doing this job. But I'm not critical of people for being ugly. I'm not critical for being fat, but I do recognize that society does work differently for different kinds of people, right? Very attractive people, society works one way. Average people, society works another way. Ugly people, society works another way. Fat people, society works another way. And so I do think it's important to identify what the distinctions are for all of those different people. And there are different distinctions for the way society works for black people, white people, Asian people, Jewish people, and that kind of stuff. I don't think in America it's as significant as being good looking or being ugly. I think being good looking and being ugly are you're much more likely to have a different life, or for society to perceive you differently, as it will if you are black or white, right? That's what I think. I genuinely think that. And so I often use those different things to contrast each other here in America. In other countries, it's very different. But in America, certainly looks has a huge impact on how society treats you and how you're perceived and how you perceive yourself and this sort of thing. And I think this is a good indication of that. And obviously, Hollywood is a place in particular Hollywood is, I think, falsely perceived as a place that's particularly shallow. In some ways, it definitely is. It's appropriately perceived that way. But weirdly, most of the working actors that you see are not that good looking. Like, yeah, big stars are often very good looking. But only a certain percentage of them. A lot of working actors, just regular folks, are kind of weird looking people, because you don't want everybody in a movie or everybody on a TV show to be good looking, right? Because then you could have people that actually overshadow the actors. And then you've got a show like Silicon Valley, which I just rewatched, great show, and everybody on that show is weird looking. There's very few good looking people on that show. So this idea that Hollywood is particularly shallow and obsessed with looks, certainly in some cases there's some people out here that are like that, but for the most part, I think Hollywood actually not necessarily true. Not always true. A lot of big stars are weird-looking folks. But I think in broader society, yeah, there are benefits, there are drawbacks from being good-looking or average-looking or different kinds of stuff, fat, skinny. Personality actually plays a much bigger role, I think, in people's lives than you think. Your outlook, your confidence, how gregarious you are. But it's interesting. It's like her saying that, like she has no reason to say that. It's like a bizarre thing to say. She's kind of an older woman. She's not a hideously ugly person. It's weird that she says that. And so that indicates to me that she still has a hang up about this, right? Because there are some people who get really hung up on how good looking they are or how they're perceived physically in society. And this is something that she wasn't compelled to say anything about this. Nobody said anything. This wasn't like a response. She brought this up herself. I'm not the pretty girl who made it in Hollywood because of the way I looked. That's just very telling to me that this point in her career, how unbelievably successful she is, and she still is hung up on this idea that she's not the prettiest girl in Hollywood. That's weird to me. You're very successful, Ellen. Nobody's thinking about that. Nobody's thinking about that. I worked from nothing to doing stand-up. And also, I would like to say this. I know a lot of very, very good-looking people in Hollywood who are not successful. And I think one of the reasons is because there is a certain amount of vitriol that you have to deal with if you're very good-looking in Hollywood. There's a certain percentage of people out here that will just hate you. They'll just hate you if you're very good-looking. If you're a woman or a man, they'll just be like, oh, yeah, you're very attractive, and they just won't like you. They have a kind of resentment of it. So this idea that, being good looking is going to somehow like magically make you a star, how can she still have that perspective? That's totally wrong. A lot of the most successful people that I've met out here in Hollywood are like regular looking or kind of ugly people. This is an inappropriate perspective of Hollywood. I worked from nothing to doing stand-up to having this career, and I'm so proud of this show. It's the best thing I've ever done in my life, and so I'll miss everything, but in my gut, I know it's time to do something different. And I mean, she is right. She has, from nothing, developed this great show, and she has been very successful. But to contrast herself with like beautiful women and act like beautiful women have such a much easier time of it, that's not true, Ellen. That's just not even true. You have a much better chance of being a success in Hollywood if you're a very, very funny woman than if you're a very, very attractive woman. So she was at an advantage from the very beginning. And on that bombshell, I think it's time to go. You have a great day, and I will see you guys tomorrow.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars. And it's been said if we lose that war, and in so doing lose this way of freedom of ours, history will record with the greatest astonishment that those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening.